In a suspended narrative, where crystal lanterns sway in the gaze of time, there lay a valley shrouded in eternal mists and forgotten memories. It was a space stripped of haste, where the day melted slowly in anticipation of an absent twilight. The light, timid and shameful, filtered through dense fog, while the silence transformed into a muffled monologue, permeated by shadows that danced gently among the trees, companions of an ancestral secret. The air, a burden of humidity and sweet perfume, tasted like something once lost, reminiscent of whispering leaves recalling battles that were never fought. The damp earth breathed with an echo of untold stories, and the moss-covered stones seemed to pulse with the memory of people who had raised hopes and sorrows beneath that eternally gray sky. Something was lost with each passing moment, something that perhaps once held significance. The valley's inhabitants, if they could be called that, moved slowly, like shadows in a forgotten dream, following small daily rituals. Their voices wrapped in murmurs that dissipated before they could solidify into clear sounds. Conversations about life and death, intertwined with unspoken words. And as the sun hid behind the clouds, a heavy silence loomed between the faded smiles, as if everyone knew, even if only subconsciously, that there was an unhealed wound within their souls. In the routine dance of hours, the fog became a symbol of all that was forgotten, and at the same time, of what had always been present. In the search for meaning, there was a murmur of longing, not for memories, but for a palpable desire for depth. The trees, with their intertwined canopies, seemed to listen, yet revealed nothing. The wind, in its whispering passage, carried an inaudible melody, as if waiting for a moment that was always about to come, but never materialized. Thus the valley presented itself, formless and enigmatic, a space where the echoes of unlived lives awaited someone brave enough to ask the questions that had never been posed. After all, who could know if any of this ever happened? Or if it was merely a tangled fragment of a dream that refused to awaken? A gentle mystery enveloping every breath, and in the absence of answers, leaving a sense of foreboding in the air. Something yearned for the right moment to shatter the anesthetized peace and bring to light all that the fog concealed. It continued, as always, in this eternal cycle, keeping secrets that perhaps would never be revealed, remaining suspended between past and present, between what was lost and what lived on in the notes of a forgotten song. Another night, and you're still awake, traveler. I feel the weight of history in your eyes. With every movement I make, my armor creaks like a field of unspoken songs, and sitting here by the fire feels like descending into a place I've known before, but can't quite identify when. The smoke. It dances around me, forming confusing patterns as if it wishes to reveal secrets, lingering just on the edge of memory. But I don't know if I'm truly ready to hear them. As I find myself here, encircled by these crackling embers, I recall a battle. Or was it a troubled memory of a dream? Its name slips away with time, lost in shadows that refuse to fade. I gaze into the flames and wonder if the red of the sky that night offered hints about what I've already let slip away. I felt the gentle warmth of the fire contrasting with the chill of memories rising like mist. There were promises, perhaps, or something hidden there, like a distant friend who doesn't come to visit. The emptiness in my chest whispers questions, whether all of it had ever happened or if it was merely an echo of a life I never lived. I hear whispers around me, like the movement of leaves. There are rumors of a man wandering vaguely amidst the shadows of the tents. He doesn't wear a uniform, but rather a skin of mirrors. One day, He turned to me, and I feel in my memory the eyes that stare into the very soul. They call him Megan, the linear one. There's a certain charm in that, don't you think? But he speaks little. I wonder if perhaps I was him in another life. Who can say? And look, this clay bowl, always beside the fire. In it, the delights, the memories intertwine, or perhaps just feed the yearning. There was a salty taste in everything, as if each spoonful took me back to a horizon very ancient, where the waves of the sea carried scents from a time that never transcended. They dance, these disguised memories, and I don't know if they'll let me go. Listening to the tale of the knight who never smiles, I recalled a phrase whispered during a visit to an abandoned tavern. Time is a reflection that never detaches from the pastoral of destiny. And at the same time, I felt the weight of my bones, as if every drop of existence told me its own version, each delicate movement like a paper in the dance, like a mirror with one painted side. Why did you stop? Ah, someone interrupted the song. A thick mist enveloped the air, and a soft voice echoed from afar. Looking at the fire, the heat became a faint trace amid the shadows. Do you notice that? The temperatures make the story more vital, while the echoes linger in silence. There was a woman with a handkerchief, and she only whispered to the ashes that would become future memories. That each small ember have its own dance is what matters, and that the mist always keeps the illusion of what has passed. And in this intertwining of silent stories, I wonder, traveler, close your eyes for a moment, feel the warmth of the fire, and let's walk together through this memory. Or was it a dream? The mist thickens. In the distance, I hear the murmur of a story echoing, as if time here was yet another cycle that hasn't broken. My body remembers an improbable past, an empty space where a battle was expected but never fought. These paths, these unmarked gates. Yes, traveler, the truth is an enigma cloaked in fog, and the forgotten souls here dance in the interstices of dreams. Between waking and sleeping, I remember Magan, who now floats on the periphery, never grounding himself in any time. And I am perhaps a traveler without a destination, a dancing shadow amid contained echoes. Who knows where all this will lead me? The warmth of the fire shines. It was a night when the stars seemed more distant, as if the universe were distracted in its own daydreams. I was drawn to a pen that, though modest, held an intense presence. There stood a horse, a white animal, unparalleled, as if its coat retained the purity of a newly born morning. I had never before encountered a being that looked at me that way. Deep eyes, reflections of ancestral memories, as if eternity itself were captured in its gaze. As the wind whispered unknown secrets to the branches, I approached, allowing the scent of leather and fresh grass to flood my nostrils. The ground beneath my feet was dry, almost incomprehensible in that atmosphere of humidity surrounding the camp. Even though I was surrounded by the mud covering the earth, the clay there felt empty, a surface that sustained a different kind of silence, one more profound. I tried to touch him, to let my hands slide along his mane, but a hesitant gesture formed near his muzzle. In the blink of an eye, his eyes turned to me, filled with a wisdom that made me feel irreparably small. He was more than just a horse. He was a sentinel, an anchor of history and pain, perhaps even of unrealized hopes. A murmur, perhaps the breath of dreams in the silence of the camp, lingered in the air. He knows more than I ever could. Something within me clenched upon realizing that the horse remained still. He stood there firm, as if sensing that any movement could tear apart some fabric of time. The costurero whispered once that those eyes could belong to a king, or someone lost in the mists of battle, waiting for his moment unhurriedly. Hours seemed to dissolve the space between us. The air was imbued with a freshness that didn't belong solely to that place. There was an echo of other times, perhaps distant lands. I then realized that his hooves did not mark the ground. His anchors weighed on the wind, as if his roots intertwined with everything around him. As if not only he waited, but the camp itself was also waiting for something that would never come. The mist began to thicken around us, as if announcing a secret kept by the customs that lived there. I sat down in front of him, not understanding if I was expecting something from him or if he was expecting something from me. Silence stretched its claws around us, and in that space between awareness and absence, I questioned, what is really happening here? The horse did not answer, but in his gaze, I understood that the answer was not something that could be verbalized. The feeling grew. There was something subterranean, an invisible truth dancing beneath the surface, and I was merely a fragment, a lost spectator in search of meaning. The bell that once belonged to the entrance of the camp seemed to ring in my memories, a distant echo invoking stories, as if every chime announced something beyond flesh and memory, a summons to understand what I could not, a voice from a past intertwined with the present, a chimeric truth. Two teenagers approached, laughing, and silence wrapped around us like a cloak. As their laughter reverberated, the horse glanced at them and then at me, a subtle reminder that life's trivialities often overshadow the deeper truths. For a moment I felt a weight on my shoulders, as if part of me had allowed itself to forget. And by seeing them, I realized that laughter was merely a shiny surface, hiding the abyss of what remained unsaid. The weight of silence. Shadows stretched long and distorted by the light of a distant fire. The dream I had birthed within me started to fade. The horse remained there, silent and steadfast, while I reflected on those who had moved away, on the stories that murmuration told me. The strange connection between us was not just an instant. It was a reminder of who I was and all I had lost, wrapped up in a silence that felt more honorable than speech itself. Perhaps everything did happen, or perhaps it was just the way I wanted to remember. But one certainty engulfed me, as if time in the camp had not moved around us, just I, in search of meaning with every step we took, still in a world where the horse observed. And even now, when I look back on those memories, I can feel his steady hooves like anchors, rooted in the earth, while the sky faded into mist. The forest carried a weight, not just of foliage, but of memories. The tall, slanted trees seemed to listen with devotion to every whisper the breeze dared to let slip. I lost myself among the sturdy trunks, each step a new doubt, as if the earth wanted to speak to me. But the words dissolved before they could be uttered. The scent of damp wood wrapped around me like a tight embrace, mingling with the fragrance of something uncanny, something I could never quite name. It was like walking over the echoes of stories that the forest refused to fully reveal. There the shadows danced in sync with my thoughts, repeating the same steps that I struggled to follow. I looked down at the ground, covered with dry leaves, where something always seemed to stir, as if it had a life of its own. And I, a blurry figure, was lost in a labyrinth of my own existence. I wondered if the roots of those trees absorbed not just the moisture from the earth, but also the elusive memories that could barely be perceived, the stories that were never told, the secrets that refuse to unveil. And when I leaned against a trunk, a subtle chill crawled up my spine. A flicker, almost imperceptible, twinkled somewhere in my vision, a light that did not belong to this time, as if the very essence of the forest were holding something precious, hidden within its layers. Sometimes, when I looked up at the sky, a bird with feathers so blue they seemed ordinary passed by, never daring to fly. Its shadows merely danced among the leaves, like memories that never materialized. The sky remained covered, and I was certain that perhaps none of that had ever happened. But who could know? I remember one afternoon when the light filtered through the branches, drawing shapes on the ground. I paused to breathe, and then I heard a whisper. They were distant, almost unintelligible voices, as if the earth wanted to tell me a secret, but failed to convey the weight of those words. Dominating the scene, a detail illuminated in the shadows. A rusted bell hung from the highest branches, swaying softly, as if inviting the forest to sound a lament in unison. Suddenly, out of the blue, the leaf beneath my feet moved, in a dance of copies and echoes. I wondered then what the shadows were made of, if not of untold stories, and what voices lay hidden behind that curtain of leaves. A distant laughter shattered the silence. The man I never saw, but whom I supposed was there. He danced among the shadows, summoning expressions I didn't recognize. But as he stepped away, he left behind a feeling of confusion, as if something had passed yet was never truly present. The sensation of being trapped in the intertwining roots of the past was palpable as I explored this forest of secrets. A light melancholy enveloped me. I was but an echo of those memories, perhaps a story waiting to be told, a fragment wavering on the brink of the material and the ethereal. And I wondered if one day the forest would let me go, or if I would always follow it, heart heavy with the whispers that the trees guarded. I tried not to remember what I could not, the essence always elusive, always being consumed by the trees that kept my secret. And as the shadows moved subtly, I understood that all were there, trapped. It wasn't just me. It was an entire forest, confirming the melancholy of existence, recalling little details that were lost long before I arrived. After many turns, I returned to the pathway, recognizing a scar in the soil that led me back to the exit. Perhaps the trees, in their silent wisdom, knew I would always return. But deep down, perhaps the feeling of loss would never leave me, like a chain tying me to a past that I could no longer remember, but felt, fiercely, like a cutting wind at my back. And even now, as I recall those moments among the trees that held my secrets, I still wonder, what more could have been said? What other echoes does the forest still hide? Yes, the mist keeps its shroud over us, but at the same time, the hope that one day, perhaps, everything will be revealed. I remember a friend. Perhaps he never existed. His presence hovered around me like a delicate shadow, a breeze nurtured in the secrets of the past. His face floated in my memory like the echo of a distant thunder, always there but never definitively present. Amidst the workings of chance, I feel the mind arranges pieces of a being that may have been woven from mist. There was a smell. Oh, that smell. It was almost a perfume, but not in the way that nobles embellish it. It was more like aged paper kept in a chest of memories, the odor of unread leaves. This aroma led me to long conversations beneath a sky of stars that forgot to shine. His laughter should have danced among the trees, but the sound dissipated like leaves in the wind, leaving only murmurs of something that could have been. But how strange the mind is. I wonder, could he be a ghost, or merely a construct of the void I could not fill? The void itself is often a bottomless box, where the echoes of promises and setbacks intertwine. Just like the wind that decides to blow at the least opportune moment, his laughter resounded among the branches, making me question, did I create him in an effort to let something, even if ephemeral, touch me? I recall that when sitting under the shade of an old tree, where the roots intertwined like lost memories, I realized that the line between real and imaginary is so thin that even a whisper could not break its fabric. It was as if his memory was a part of me, an extension of what I longed to have lived. He was there, yet fleeting. A fig tree beckoning its leaves on a cloudy day, and amidst the sounds of the camp, there was his laughter, just a distant echo for one who remembered. One day, while walking through the camp looking for something I couldn't name, I came across a non-flying bird. Yes, that's right, a strangely earth-bound bird, as if it had decided to live with the weight of the earth. It stared at me with deep, confused eyes, and in that instant, I knew. It was a sign. A symbol of the haphazard existence I carried within me, the remnants of a friend who was never acknowledged, perhaps never even existed. The mystery deepened. I stayed there, hesitating, perhaps waiting for an answer that would never come. Maybe I created him to combat this loneliness that followed me like mist in the mornings. As the winds blew and the voices fell silent, I realized that absence is often a safer place, a residence that reveals itself only when provoked. Sense of unfulfilled promises filled my nostalgic longing. The feeling that his laughter danced among the branches is an echo that does not fade away, although I hesitate to believe. So I set aside those thoughts, while the mist enveloped the long shadows of the afternoon, reminding me perhaps all of this was just a thread of your imagination, a sway of ideas crossed in the current of a tired mind. Sometimes I wonder if that really happened. I continue to drift as the landscape transforms around me and the night consumes unaware. And in the end, beneath that flickering lamplight, the doubt remained. A friend? An echo? Or just a piece of the solitude we exchanged between invisible laughs? This memory, even without a body, at times weighs on me like armor worn for too long. And yet there is a lightness in the recollection, a sort of low laughter that, even distant, fills the voids left by absence. Perhaps that was all we needed, that distant laugh like a thread of life, hanging between doubt and certainty, that we live under the fire of memory. Even today, as I blow into the wind and hear its echoes, I feel as if something has always been close. So maybe I let it slip away, or perhaps I kept it inside me, in a broken mirror, reflecting silences, but still echoes of laughter on misty nights. It was a tranquil afternoon, or perhaps a morning lost among hours, when I found a piece of my past. Or maybe it was a dream. The touch of the parchment beneath my fingers reminded me of leaves that whisper when the wind blows, kept between the pages of a dusty notebook which I may never have opened. The parchment seemed spiraled like memory, dry and almost fragile, a shadow that refuses to be forgotten. The words I looked at swayed as if they wanted to dance, yet could not come together into anything coherent. They were loose fragments of a language I knew but did not understand. What a strange feeling that those words were like water, flowing between my fingers, but unable to burn. The scent of fresh ink lingered in the air, and I realized that the emotion it carried became bitter on my palate, a confusion of feelings I could not translate. I remember trying to find meaning in those enigmatic words, while the notebook seemed to laugh at me, like an old friend keeping secrets. With each glance, my frustration grew. Time, in turn, seemed to laugh as well, as if saying that truth would always escape our most fervent understanding. And so I cradled the paper, as if dealing with a creature of mist, breathing its shapes with a start of questioning in my eyes. At that moment, a cup on the table wobbled, and the sound made my heart race. The anxiety of uncertainty came. Was I dreaming or really living that moment? What were those words trying to show me? The feeling of lack is an insidious companion, and my spirit wavered between a desire to understand and a fear of what I might find. An unusual detail caught my attention, a shadow behind me. It wasn't mine because the environment seemed to absorb light, but it moved, bending in a way that defied logic. I looked at the notebook. The parchment stirred as if it had a life of its own, and a corner of the page rose, and then froze. An idea, perhaps a phrase, an emptiness that echoed. Maybe all that didn't happen, a mere déjà vu of a past that refuses to surface. Sometimes I still hear echoes of that ship of lost dreams, where the words hide, where the essence dissolves. The figures in that notebook seemed like stories from another time, of entire battles that were never fought. My mind wandered between the pages as the threads of memory intertwined into a labyrinth. Remembrances surfaced in the form of whispers, but none made sense. The parchment, the notebook, the rain that wouldn't fall, and the mist that enveloped everything, almost as if time were blurred, like a painting that never found its end. Then the gaze became more intense. The parchment, now, seemed merely a reminder that truth is an elusive shadow, always available, but never within reach. Thoughts mingled like currents of rivers, seeking the sea, and I, a mere traveler without a destination, was unsure whether to move on or remain. Finally, when I looked back at the parchment, I realized that what it carried was the echo of something deeper. It was as if, before being transferred to paper, the words had been whispered by creatures of memory, beings who live between dreams and reality. And at the core, there was an almost revelation, what could have been a forgotten truth from a time when meaning still held power. The fog of doubt still lingered, and the notebook, with its dancing letters, no longer announced only kindness. A growing weight settled in my chest, as if those fragments of experience had shrunk and become part of me. Now I breathed those words, even the ones I didn't understand. Something was interconnected. Some fiery desire remained intact, a longing to know beyond. Sometimes, setting the notebook aside, I feel my own life unfurl like the parchment. I no longer see it as a fragile piece of paper, but as a mirror reflecting what we let slip away. Thus we continue on this uncertain path, and when the wind blows from the north and memories sway like parchment in the flow of time, I still wonder, what have we lost? And more so, will I ever understand what those words truly wanted to say? Ah, yes, the mournful echo of swords. Even without the presence of warriors, the memory of the clangor painted a mural between the walls of my mind. The reverberating sound, as if the blades embraced the void, surrounded me in my solitary musings. The odor of freshly melted iron held the heat of evaporated memories, absent, warning me of battles that never materialized. Where were the men to fight? If they were here, why did they not appear? I saw shields lifted, cold and gleaming, which set forth echoes of voices. I wonder, what echoes are these? A whirlwind, shouts in harmony, clamoring for freedom but without response. The thick air of clamor and despair vibrated like an out-of-tune instrument, like a symphony that only the earth understood. Perhaps the earth itself implored for redemption. Even so, the fight did not happen. Perhaps the battle was entangled in the mist, or maybe in each shadow that dragged across the walls of the camp. While I listened to those sounds, tense, almost palpable, I tried to discern what was real and what was merely an unfulfilled desire, a baton of pain mingled with empty hope. Maybe it never really happened, I thought, as visions faded like freshly burnt coal. Fortunately, a moment of lightness washed over me. There was a squirrel rummaging in the nearby ground, its paws moving as if it danced to the rhythm of the battle, even though there were no swords or warriors around. I looked at it, restless, and cursed its antics. What a joke this was, amidst such seriousness. When I lifted my gaze, I found a shadow that shouldn't have been there. Perhaps just an illusion of an exhausted spirit, but a presence that sucked the air around me. Considering how memories intertwine with reality, I no longer knew if what I saw was truly there. Voices clashed like objects in a puzzle. What I didn't understand was that these whispers were part of a tapestry overlaying what once was light. I felt a growing desire, a need to understand why the echoes of the battle persisted, like a song of someone no longer present. Then a man, with indistinguishable features, approached with firm steps. The edges of his form dissolved into an almost tangible mist. He said nothing, but the weight of determination he carried made any word unnecessary. He simply gestured towards the echo of the clamor. Behind him, a shadow of a symbol, a colorless and formless banner, pulled itself from the ground, floating in a sad ballet, as if it knew of an event that would never unfold. I felt my heart grow heavy, for it seemed a pact unmade. Because deep down, I felt a connection to the earth, and when I turned towards the empty field, I asked myself if we were merely waiting, like all those in those floating memories, revealed only when the mist settled. When I returned to the warmth of the campfire, a whimsical thought infiltrated my mind. It wasn't the lament of war that troubled me, but perhaps what had never been lived, the stories untold. Something inside me whispered, like a distant lament. We forgot to betray. Because there were unfulfilled vows, muffled sounds that choked the air around. And so I let the sound wander, resonating in a space where light and shadow danced hand in hand, like an appeal clamoring for meaning. After all, who was I but a mere echo, lost among fragments of an unfinished puzzle? And there I was again, among the shadows, the swords, and the bitter taste of a battle that perhaps would never be real. There was a night when the sky donned an inexplicable flush. It wasn't a sunset, nor the beginning of a dawn. It was a suspended moment when red light spilled across the camp, warming the skin and igniting the air, as if the very space were being consumed by an ancestral remembrance, a submerged memory. I got lost in this almost palpable warmth, while the shadows danced frantically around me. They were shadows of faces I had never known. Bright eyes, smiles echoing from a distant place, all present, yet none of them belonged to me. If I were to gaze at the sky, I felt that the flush was not merely a color. It was a warning. Yes, something was advising me of what might happen in a universe where the stars twinkled less. That light seemed to stretch the present, weaving a tapestry of intertwined feelings, longing, sorrow, and that unsettling void. I questioned time, with a frustration akin to that of one seeking an echo in a valley of echoes. How could I possibly miss a light that brought no truth, but merely a disturbance? The sounds in the camp began to fade. Each laugh, each conversation, dissolved in the intensity of the light. It was as though the world around me existed in a parallel dimension, where logic was condensed to that murky crimson glow. And so I gazed at the stars, hoping to understand the reason for the tears that slid down my cheeks. Tears that felt more like remnants of those that fell from constellations I no longer recognized. Maybe it all happened before. Doubt enveloped me, a gentle whisper waiting to be remembered. It was then that the sky condensed, as if holding a mystery that awaited revelation, but remained hidden beneath the polished surface of the red light. A strange sensation took hold of me, as if an invisible creature were observing me. I shifted my perspective, and I cannot say how. I realized that the fog was alive. It moved like memories of ancient times, echoing its mysteries in a space solely mine. The sensation of warmth affected not just my body, but my mind as well. It was a warmth that had burned experiences I could hardly recall. Dry leaves cracked under my feet, intertwining reality with the crispness of a dream. As I moved, I saw that the shadows of the trees seemed to dance strangely, as if they sought a meaning that they had never discovered. Something indeed loomed in the air, something that shimmered, and I wondered if this was what they called destiny. Once during that same night, I encountered someone with a shadowy demeanor, a figure seemingly weaving invisible lines between the contours of light and dark. "The light isn't always what it seems," he said, his voice echoing like a quavering echo. "And the eyes that often open are not always the ones that close." His presence was a key, a mystery that leaned heavily upon what had never been dared to decipher. I looked at him, unable to understand, yet felt something move within me, jealously, like a cat pursuing a shadow. As I pondered the murky clarity of that scarlet light, I realized that something was dissolving before me. The past and present fused like paints thrown onto a palette, and thus I remembered what perhaps had never existed, the face of a beloved one, the one whose memory lingered like an enigma. Was it her, or merely an illusion growing in the shadow of the light? What was truth? What were tears? In this fog of confusions, everything transformed into a mystery, cloaked in symbolism emerging from both light and dark. The red light kept burning. I looked beyond, trying to find meaning, but nothing was revealed. The weight of the space swelled in my chest, and a weak farewell echoed softly between the foliage and what remained. And when the mist finally dissipated, the memories also dissolved into the scraps of a reality where it was uncertain whether I who persisted or the memory that had forgotten me. Even today, when a gentle wind blows and the shadows embrace me, I hear something. Yet I'm not sure of what it is. Is it the light? Is it the echo? Or perhaps it's just a worn-out thought that refuses to disappear? It was a shadow. Not the kind that takes form in daylight, but one that stretches like a lament, a subtle echo of a moment that perhaps was never lived. It walked beside me, relentless, and as much as I tried to shake it off, it always stayed there, with a persistence that spoke more than 1,000 words. I would see it slide only in the corner of my eye, like a wandering thought that refuses to vanish, as if it knew more about me than I did. The smell of damp earth mingled with the distant notes of my racing heart. With each step I took through the camp, it manifested, swelling as if it wanted to whisper my fears, the deepest weaknesses men carry in darkness. And yet there was something familiar about the pain that accompanied me, like a friend I never asked for, but who knew exactly where to poke at my fragility. Perhaps it was all an echo of fragmented memories, perceived only in the moment I looked at the mist-covered ground, tangled in footprints that were not mine, but belonged to me. In moments of struggle, I felt it closer, almost like it pressed against me, overshadowing my hopes and heightening my fears. It was like a constant challenge, a reminder that I was not whole. Its weight, as I traversed the muddy terrain, became almost palpable, a caricature of my insecurities facing the world. I looked at the fire that night, where the crackling glow seemed to dance whimsically, and for a moment, I silently asked it if there were memories in that flame, if it held secrets of my lost times. But the shadow did not respond. It swayed instead, as if wanting to remember, as if it wished to tell all that had been forgotten, or to push me to confront what made me human. And so I sat by the fire, surrounded by warmth, yet feeling the cold of a past that kept tugging behind me. It's funny, traveler, how the things we didn't ask for can accompany us. Sometimes I feel that the shadow is a mirror, not a reflection of my victories, but of the battles lost before they were fought. Just like a bell that tolls without anyone knowing why, or a door that opens to a place that no longer exists. I didn't know if what I experienced was real. The color of life outside my memory blended, as if everything were just a weary dream. Or maybe none of this ever happened. The camp as echo perhaps existed only in the memories of those who were lost. We were all shadows, searching for light somewhere, falling back into a sea of solitude whenever we paused to reflect. Some way, somehow, the shadow made the path feel heavier, truer. A strange friendship wrapped in invisible chains. Even today, when a breeze blows from that side, I hear something beyond myself. A tangled whisper that ebbs and flows, as if I see the footprints I've left behind but can no longer recognize. An echo questioning. Perhaps I left something behind in that place, but never knew what. The caw of a crow echoed in the distance, a mournful melody, dragging like mist. It felt like the echoes of its grievances tethered me to the ground where my feet hesitated, and I, reluctant, sensed reality slipping away like a poorly remembered dream. It sang, not just in notes, but in sounds of entwined memories, as if each word uttered was a thread pulling me back to a man now hidden in the mists of time. The words of that man returned to me, like spells spoken during nights of confusion, and I wondered who he might be, even without truly knowing what I remembered. He was a man of shadows, passing by me like a whisper, his face dissolved in the dark lines of memory. Yet the weight of his presence was undeniable. He had shared nostalgia and sorrows, and his words reverberated in my being as if they had intertwined in forgetfulness, sealed beneath the mist of what might have been. Perhaps that never really happened, I thought, as the crow dragged its song, resonating with a lament echoing deeply in my tired bones. The night enveloped everything around, and a soft breeze, heavy with the scent of damp earth, floated among the tents, bringing something that couldn't be touched. Amidst this stillness, my mind played tricks on me. A fragment of his name slipped away, and I struggled to hold on to it. It was as if every whisper from the crow transformed into a question about dreams that were not mine, about the voices around that escaped like whispering echoes in the dead breeze. In the distance, the shadows of the trees stretched long, and I lost myself in their vague contours. A confusing symbol formed before me, a tower that did not rise but inverted under the pressure of my gaze. I stared long, trying to find what it meant, but like a whispered secret, it dissolved when a single tear of light danced in the darkness and faded before I could grasp it. What I didn't know was that the nightmare of that man, who had departed and never returned, was etched in the melody of the crow, echoing in every beat of my weary heart. An echo that made me ask, Where have the dreams he left behind gone? The question lingered between us, a lament settling in the night. But it was a question without answer, floating like the mist that now surrounded the camp. Amidst this reflection, I recalled a joke the man had whispered, perhaps to ward off the pain enveloping his thoughts. He said that those who asked too many questions about the past ended up losing the present. A light smile appeared, almost like a solace in a moment laden with inexplicable weight in such a heavy place. Outside, everything became more and more nebulous, and the spirit of the man from the past floated by my side as the moon let its shadows dance, swaying to the rhythm of that bird's song. The rare tone of its melody resonated with the acceptance of what could not be changed. I looked at the sky covered in clouds, like a shroud hiding the horizon in something even more confusing and distant. It definitely didn't need to make sense. But even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The stars that night looked melted by loneliness. It was as if each twinkling point in the vast black sky was slowly dripping, slipping into the darkness, and along with them, my hopes, wilting silently like forgotten petals in the wind. The cold, which cut through the skin and penetrated to the core of my heart, kept sorrow tightly bound, wrapping me in a shroud of absence. I looked up, where the darkness was filled with nebulous and shining forms, yet they seemed like distorted mirrors of a past I could not comprehend. What were they trying to tell me? The melody of the constellations hung in the air like an echo of something once significant. In that moment, I sensed the scent of humidity evaporating into the cosmos, a blend of earth and distant memories, emerging like fleeting shadows, whispering laughter I could no longer hear. It was tremendous to think that the stars might hold pieces of me, unlived moments still resonating in the folds of time, as if relics of a past self hid within the layers of the universe. The connection was there, though it felt ghostly, hovering in the fog of the unknown. It was an overwhelming sensation that everything was intertwined, but the truth remained hidden behind a veil of melted stars. Meanwhile, loneliness expanded with each passing minute, a labyrinth where nothing seemed to move, not even time itself. Sometimes, when the wind blew from that side, I would hear a distant song, a whisper that said among rocks and leaves, maybe that never happened. Just like an image failing to fix in the memory, I hesitated between the real and the dreamlike, between what felt true and what became fleeting. Still seated on the cold ground that night, I realized something remarkable. Around me, small mushrooms sprouted, timid and pale, like forgotten words in an abandoned book. Blossoming among the mud, they seemed to know more about life and death than we did. The night was saturated with that strangeness. Everything coexisted in a solemn and peculiar rhythm. Had I ever heard the legend of a scene that had been lived by many, yet had never truly unfolded? Like that instant when a beautiful bird, rarely seen, flew by, but vanished before anyone could glimpse it. The murmurs of the camp, in the distance, intertwined with the sound of reality and illusion. Words were exchanged with the sound of awkwardness, muffled laughter that didn't quite reach a conclusion. They weren't just words cast into the wind. They were echoes of a deep understanding lost in soft whispers. I remembered a dear friend who once told me that sorrow does not oppose hope, but cradles it in a warm embrace. And in the firelight, these reflections danced in my mind like flames that served both as refuge and as labyrinth. As I looked up at the sky, the darkness thickened, like a caress devoid of touch. And thus the resounding night led me to question, what do we become, and how do we act when loneliness establishes itself as part of life? Is comfort in that void what makes us human? Almost as if the stars not only illuminated but also revealed what lies hidden in the caverns of our hearts. And in that tumult of thoughts, there came a moment when an unknown echo, formless and void, penetrated those reflections. A fleeting light dancing in the shadows. The mist enveloped everything. The shapes turned distorted shadows, and I heard a voice, soft as a whisper of falling snow, saying, "After all, we are always on the brink of something extraordinary, if only we remembered how to look." This made me realize that the world around me was not merely a passive scenery. It concealed secrets woven between the threads of time. And so, as I allowed myself to lose in thoughts, and the cold of solitude continued to expand around me, something inside me blossomed slowly, like the light now dancing along my skin. I am the stars, I am the memory, I am the song still unfinished. Around me, solitude was full of life. As I gazed at the stars melted by solitude, I let the mist of feelings and questions surround me. For who knows, perhaps on the next night, I would manage to hear the answer again. It was a fiery flower. I know this. Not what one would expect from a flower, but an absurd combustion of colors, red, orange, and gold, as if fire itself had learned to bloom. I was 10 or perhaps 11 when I first saw it, amidst a vast field of grasses, swaying gently with the breath of spring. Yet what truly amazes me is how I do not remember its scent. Just the memory of its vibrant essence fills my chest, almost something tangible, yet at the same time so distant, just like the fog that hides the sky at dawn. The warmth of that flower was almost palpable. Around it, there seemed to be an aura, a tangle of recollections and feelings, as if the memories of an entire lifetime were interwoven among its petals. At the moment I first laid eyes on it, it felt like the whole universe receded just a little. In that instant, there was no sound, just the flower, the soft grass, and me, the boy who didn't know he would one day grow weary of searching for its glow. There was great confusion in my mind. I remember asking someone who was with me what that flower meant. He merely looked at me with an enigmatic smile, but his answer dissolved in the mists of time, like a story that gets lost before being told. "It burns in silence," he said. But what was truly hidden in that silence? How many unspoken memories were nestled there, wrapped in vibrant colors? It's strange how the sublime can carry such cumbersome weight. And so I wonder, how could a flower, as breathtaking as that one, be so heavy in meaning? It was an ephemeral beauty that seemed to cry out for life while simultaneously reflecting the absolute distance of that which I had never lived. I will always remember it, I thought. But what could I possibly remember? The fiery flower was not just a symbol of nature. It marked everything I hadn't experienced. Loves, losses, and dreams that evaporated like the glow at dawn. Deep down, I share this slow, anguishing doubt. Could even such an ephemeral existence leave a legacy? A legacy left for whom? All I saw was a shadow of something that could become. Once, while the world carried the warm light of a day about to end, I was so absorbed in thought that I failed to notice a shadow moving, the recognizable silhouette of a nighttime traveler beckoning me. Or perhaps it was just the wind. There was a body of time passing when I inquired. A soft laugh echoed in the air, and what I saw was neither man nor woman, just a multitude of silhouettes dreaming beneath the dimming light of the flower. Strangers, a flock of memories, a resplendent flower burning in my memory, and perhaps in their small bodies, or perhaps throughout the entire emptiness contained in their essences. How dense yet ineffable is the fragility of those who stumble between what they felt and what they dreamed. I cannot quite remember how the flower left, or if it really departed for time. Ah, that old wolf that consumes us with every moment. One day it was there, the next, it vanished like ashes floating in the autumn breeze, as if it had no meaning whatsoever. What remained was merely an echo of longing and this restless cycle that twisted my heart, tearing me apart in its webs. And in that fragility, as the essence of everything I loved slowly dispersed, a desire, perhaps, to capture the fleeting flame in the form of a smile or a word stayed with me. If I could feel the warmth of that fiery flower once more, perhaps I would remember. Yet every memory I tried to hold drained away. Thus, as life continued and the world remained on its untamed turn, I found myself amidst the flames of memories that were never lived. Perhaps all that had indeed happened once, perhaps not. But if the echo of a fiery flower remained within me, would that be the key to unlock a portal to something beyond? Something waiting to be rediscovered among the hymns of those who never returned. And even now, as I seek the words to narrate this, I feel I left something behind in that field. Something, or perhaps everything I never knew I needed. He always sat in the same spot, by the central fire, on the boundary between light and shadow, where the embers still warmed but the eyes could not see everything. His posture was too straight for a man so old. And he was old, or at least he seemed to be. No one remembered seeing him arrive, and no one, it seems, saw him leave. He was just there, sitting, always, without speaking, without sleeping. We called him the Sitting One. Others preferred the Silence. Some whispered that he was once a commander. Others thought he was a spy from a war we all forgot. But the truth, like so many there, was slippery. One night, the cook left a bowl of broth by his side. He didn't touch it, not even look. He stayed there, the smoke ascending slowly, dissolving into the void between him and the world. The next morning the bowl had vanished. In its place was a stone, smooth, black, and damp. Some tried to elicit a reaction. A boy danced in front of him. An old man told jokes that no one understood anymore. A woman sang the incomplete song, very slowly. Nothing. His eyes, fixed on the fire. Not as if he were gazing, but as if he awaited something that only the embers could reveal. There was one night it rained just on him. A fine rain, like vapor. Someone placed a cloth over his shoulders. He remained still. By morning the cloth was dry. Once I tried to touch him. The air around him was dense, as if time passed more slowly there. The costurero said the horse was the last one to remember why we were there, and that's why it couldn't blink. If he closes his eyes, he once said, we all forget at the same time. There was a dawn when I woke, or dreamed I was awake, and saw him standing. Yes, standing, with his back to all, gazing at the horizon. The sky was starry, and beside him was a figure, an almost human silhouette carved from dim light. They stayed there for a few seconds. Afterward, the Sitting One returned to his place and never moved again. Once, someone placed a mirror before him, small, round. The image reflected was not his. It was of a young man, smiling with frightened eyes. The mirror cracked before sunset, a curious detail. Behind him, in the earth, nothing grew. No moss, no fungus, no root shadows. An exact barren circle, as if the world stopped breathing there. And sounds. The sounds near him grew muffled. Laughter died. Steps turned into whispers. Even the crackling of the campfire dimmed, as if silence had hunger, and he fed it. Some said he was a warning, others a sentence. There were those who believed that when he spoke, the camp would cease to exist. That his first word would also be the last one spoken there. Once they left an open diary by him. The page was blank. The next day, a single phrase appeared. "It's not time yet." You know, traveler, sometimes I wonder if all that really happened, or if he is just a part of us that refuses to rest, the vigil we carry in our eyes, even when the body pleads for repose. Today, as I approach sleep, I feel his presence, like an unlit spark, a posture within my chest, and I think, what if he is the last one who dreams for all of us? It was on a night like this that, while the others conversed and the mist danced around, I too heard the echo of voices dying. It seemed that the sitting one held the secret of all the untold stories, the weight of a guilt that used no words. He was there, guardian of silence, like the cavernous murmur of something overwhelming that could be remembered, or not. The warmth of the fire illuminated his figure, but the shadow that stretched seemed to drag around, trying to reach something that was slipping away in the past. And the truth about him, or among us, might simply be this. One day, he whispered my name, just as he did many others. And perhaps in his eternal watch, he was trying to remind us that life continues, not by rules, but by cycles, where what has been forgotten doesn't vanish, but rests in the roots of who we are. An echo of something dark. Or perhaps only now did I realize that life was but a whisper lost in a fog of memories. You know, traveler, sometimes I think if all that really happened, or if it's just a way of reminding me that within each of us, there's a sitting one waiting to awaken, even if that means the disintegration of the mundane into unspoken words. At first, it was just a sound, low, damp, like the breathing of a beast sleeping beneath the earth, a sort of indistinct murmur that blended with the crackling of embers and the creaking of tents. Some said it was just the wind dragging. Others said it was the wood groaning under the weight of the mist. But on one very quiet night, one of those when even the fog seems to hesitate, I heard my name. Not loudly, not as a call. It was a whisper, coming from the ground, from the damp mud beside my bed. I swallowed hard. I sat up slowly. I waited. And there it came again, my name, dragging, as if said by someone who never learned to speak properly, but who knew me. Oh yes, they knew. The next day I spoke with others. Most laughed. Some said it was sleep, but 2 others said they too had heard. One of them, the man with always half-open eyes, claimed that the mud called all of us, from time to time, that it knew our footprints, that it remembered the steps taken in vain. From then on I began to notice. On the dampest days, in the darker corners of the camp, the mud would bubble. Little bubbles would rise, burst slowly, and in the popping, names. Not entire, not clear, but fragments, syllables heavy with the weight of the past. One time I heard a name that made me shiver. A friend's, one I hadn't seen since the time before the camp. I thought he was dead, or that he never existed. The next day, I saw a man with his same eyes, sitting near the fire. But he did not recognize me, and his voice was mud. An old man suggested that the earth was made of us, that our forgettings flowed into it, and that from time to time it returned a piece to us, in name, in image, in dream. One afternoon, a child. We didn't even know there was a child there. drew in the mud with their fingers. Words would emerge behind the strokes, names of people no one recognized or pretended not to know. When she finished, the mud covered the drawings like a tongue covering teeth. One time, someone dropped a metal spoon into the ground. It sank, disappeared. In its place, a small puddle formed, and from it arose a whisper, "Don't return." 3 days later, that someone left. We never saw him again. The costurero, one morning, stood for hours before an area of smooth mud. He said he heard ancient songs from when the war was still young. After that, he began sewing with his eyes closed. He said that the mud whispered better instructions than the living. A strange detail. Where the mud whispered, the ground felt colder, always, as if what spoke didn't come from beneath the earth, but from a time way before ours. One morning, the biggest tent was surrounded by footprints. They came from all directions, like fingers trying to touch its edge. But there were no marks leading away, and in the center, a clean circle. Dry. Inside it, a sentence written in dark earth, "Remembering hurts." Some tried to cover the whispers. They threw leaves, rocks, even salt. But it was useless. What the mud wanted to say, it said, always in its own time. And then one particularly cold night, I heard my name again, but this time accompanied by another. A name I hadn't heard in decades or centuries, a name that made me tremble inside, perhaps of a woman or of myself in another life. When I took a deep breath, I tasted the salty essence of the mud, as if the pain of each memory lay there, hidden beneath the surface. I looked around, and the tents seemed darker, heavier. The music of waves I remembered, those I could never hear, yet echoed in my heart, whispered among the plants covered in mist. And I wondered if each drop falling, each whisper rising, was the memory of someone I never knew. What more could the mud reveal if not covered memories? Was it God's word, perhaps? Or maybe, just maybe, we forget the bitter truth in search of a new one? In the corner of my vision, a shimmer, a remnant, a shadow, perhaps. It seemed like a map unfolding with each breath, distorted shapes molded to my desires, always within reach, yet ever slipping away. The costurero appeared for a moment that night with a long, thin needle between his fingers and said, "Here, everything is memory sewn with chicken and plaster. Some remaining ties hide the truth." A mystery, then, something we should seek. But the fear of finding something lost made the heart rest in shadows. The mud whispered not only names, but also that which we did not dare remember. And, oh, traveler, is the mud really a narrative, or the intern of our story, or merely a reflection of human fragility? Sometimes, memories were not just an ancient echo, but a premonition, a broken promise that we would always have a chance to remember. Today, as I tread upon the damp earth, I look back. 1, 2, 3 steps, and I hope to hear those names echoing again. Whispers, light. Like everything that never wanted to be forgotten, they said we were preparing for a battle. Grand, decisive, inevitable. It was what everyone murmured between warm sips of broth and prolonged silences by the fire. When the time comes, they said. As soon as the signal is given, they added. But no one knew for sure what, when, or where, or why. The training was vague. A sword cut here, a practiced step there. Sometimes we merely walked in circles, simulating formations that dissolved before taking shape. The camp seemed to rehearse the wait. There was an open field to the north, a wide clearing surrounded by silent trees and fungi that seemed to breathe. We said it would be there, the stage, the battlefield that would come. but the soil was clean, no holes, no marks, as if the very earth refused to be a stage for conflict. One day, we marched there, 100 of us, armed, alert, with eyes half closed in anticipation. We stood in position for hours. The mist enveloped us. The uniforms felt heavier than usual. Then, nothing. The sound of a branch snapping in the distance. The soft whimper of an animal, perhaps. And silence. Until we turned back. In file. In silence. As if that too was part of the drill. One night the standard was taken to the field, planted in the center. The wind tried to move its banner. In vain. 3 days later, it returned alone. No one knew who brought it back. There was a man who said he dreamed of the battle every night. He saw spears, shouts, dust, and blood. But upon waking, he couldn't remember the name of any combatant. Not even mine, he said. And so he began to write his name in the mud every morning. Until one day, he forgot how to spell it. Others thought the battle had already happened, that we were its echoes, that the camp was the reflection of such a violent fight, that the world decided to forget it. And we survived forgetting. The woman in the tea tent said that once she heard drums in the distance. She knocked 3 times. It ceased. Then, silence. It was the call, she claimed, but no one heard in time. Since then, she serves stronger tea, and never uses the word war. The more superstitious believed the battle would never come as long as we looked for it, that it would only happen if we forgot the reason, and that, upon remembering, it would fade again. Once I wrote the word battle on a piece of wood. I nailed it at the entrance to the field. The next morning it had transformed into breeze. The wood remained there, but the message was different, and the field cleaner than ever. A subtle detail. No one ever cleaned weapons, and yet they were always ready. No rust, no blunt edges, as if they were waiting or pretending to wait. One afternoon, 2 soldiers staged a fight. To practice, they said, swords in hand, measured steps. But they never touched. They spun around each other like shadows seeking form. At the end, they lowered their weapons and embraced. Then they forgot why, and there, in that static clearing, far from the onlookers, a shadow moved. It felt like a distant echo, something that whispering lakes hinted at on the surface. A shapeless creature. Eyes, which I was told, observed the darkness of the woods, watching every movement of the soldiers. When there was no response, something in the air began to dissolve, as if the hopes and promises that were being announced were collapsing. You know, traveler, sometimes I wonder if all of that really happened, or if the battle was just the invented reason for our unwillingness to leave. A hope disguised as a threat, a purpose made of smoke. Today, when I hear thunder in the distance, I close my eyes and wait to feel the weight of a war that never came. But only silence arrives, always it. And behind it all, the horse looms large, a symbol of a past that cannot vanish. White, immutable, and ethereal, it guards the memory of what was not lived. The battle that was never fought manifestly resides in every shadow, in every breath of those who are there. And even when the hours dissolve among the echoes and the mist, a sound resonates in the depths of my mind, almost like a whispered secret. The embers of the fire glow more intensely now, and when I look deep into that night, I sense something shifting, as if an answer awaited the right moment. That battle was always there, not in the expectation of conflict, but in the delivery of shared pain. Perhaps the truth is simply that we have always been ready to face what cannot be forgotten. The weight of our memories, hanging like an untouched bell, waiting in the threads of time. And thus, lingering between idea and realization, I let the shadows intertwine in my mind, absorbing the reminiscence of something that may have happened, or perhaps never happened, yet still reserves a place beneath the fog of our hearts. A field birthed in mist and longing. One day, at dawn, while the last stars dissolved into the mist, I remembered the horizon, the reddish sky stretched before me like a canvas, where memories intertwined with the light fading slowly. The warmth of morning mingled with the chill of the departing night, a subtle conflict, as if life and death were dancing in an endless, elegant ballet. The deep crimson seemed to offer tales, whispers to be heard only by the most attentive. It was there, in that fleeting moment, that I felt a call, a gust of nostalgia that gripped me. As I gazed at the bloodied sky, I realized that the bubbling colors were the very essence of what I had been and what I could still become. Each hue bore the gift of awakening memories that danced before my weary eyes, like leaves in the wind. I could be free, like the sky, but there was always a cost. A question lingered in my mind, like heavy clouds. What had I left behind? The weight of that departure that never materialized. The passion that could renew my determination now felt distant, like an echo in a lost valley. With each moment, the light shifted. It pulsed and vibrated, and in a flash, I felt that the weight on my shoulders was becoming a feather, floating, almost dancing. The melancholy, so familiar, finally found refuge in the lights of the day approaching, like a sad song waiting for its final note. And thus I pondered, what would come next? The words, each more verbose than the last, seemed to fail in fading into the reddish horizon, blending into a fluid of new consciousnesses, sculpted in the forgotten corners of life. A movement in the distance pulled me out of my thoughts, like a shadow stretching in the dawn, a strange creature with eyes that seemed to understand reality deeper than anyone else. Was it a reflection of what I was, or a manifestation of what I feared to become? Yet the animal evaporated in the light that was rising, leaving only a whispering echo, a trace of doubt. Maybe that never happened. Thus the memory slipped away, dissolving into the light that twisted through the sky. I perceived everything in a murmur as if, while watching, each vision shifted like ink mixed with water. A shadow, like that enigmatic creature, appeared in my peripheral vision, reminding me that what lay ahead could never be touched without first leaving something behind. I recalled a toneless echo of voices, laughing and crying simultaneously, perhaps of what I had been or of what I had dreamed, habits and gestures from a time that always appeared to expand but never advance. And the doubt, the doubt, the only constant that united us. Suddenly something within my chest ignited, a flame born from silence, raw and intense. The weight of longing transformed into warmth, merging with that reddish light. Would it be a renewal or merely another cycle? Laughter turned to tears, and I, an observer in the dance of the day that was rising, firing between what I possessed and all that I might never attain. The whispers of the horizon echoed within me. When the sky transformed, I let my heart open to the vertigo of uncertainty. I was there, between the last look and the first breath of the day breaking, wrapped in all the unfulfilled promises. And still, there was room for more stories, more songs. For as the light embraced me, the shadows swayed silently, waiting for the next note to be played. Sometimes, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, yet I'm not sure what it is. Is it the light? Is it the echo? Or perhaps it's just a worn thought that refuses to fade. It was a night like this, quiet, with the wind whispering among the trees, not as a song, but as a confession, and the sky shrouded in a thin mist where not even the stars dared to shine fully. I sat near the fire, as I had so many times before, and then slowly a thought came. I had been there before, not days before, not weeks, long before, even before knowing what a camp was, before the first swords, before the first forgotten name. The recollection didn't come as a vivid image. It came as a smell, the moss, the warm tea, the damp leather, a breath of wind carrying the same scent of childhood, or a very old dream. I looked around, the tents, the footprints that only arrived, the incomplete song, everything was in place, too exact to be mere coincidence, as if every detail had been placed there by someone who knew me intimately, or by myself from long ago. I stood up. I walked among the hanging uniforms, through the field where no battle happened. I touched the trunk next to the largest tent. It replied with a hollow sound, as if it contained echoes of ancient steps. Mine. I passed by the pillars where the gate once stood. The mist shifted. I felt a pang in my chest, familiar, like the absence of a memory that almost returns. Almost. And then I saw it, not with my eyes, but with that which remains when the eyes close. I saw myself, younger, firmer, with eyes haunted by expectation, arriving at the camp, just like everyone arrives, without questions, just following the scent of iron and tea. I saw the white horse stare at me. I saw the sitting one turn his face. For a second, I watched the diary write, return, and I comprehended. That place was not geography. It was a cycle. It was memory spiraling. It was the repeated wait until recollection entirely dissolved. Perhaps we all had been there before, in other lives, in other dreams, in battles that refused to begin. And when that idea took form, it didn't frighten me. On the contrary, there was comfort, like finding an old childhood room, like remembering that the sound of rain on the roof is the same in any time. You know, traveler, sometimes I wonder if all that really happened. But other times, and those are the ones that weigh the most, I'm certain that I'm still there, that the words I murmur by the fire are not tales, they are returns. And you, who now listens to me, may be feeling that same taste of warm tea and ancient longing. Perhaps you too have passed through there. Perhaps you still are. The fire has dimmed now. The ember sways slowly, like one who bids farewell without haste. And I let the words flow slower now, like old honey, like the last sip of tea that never cooled, yet never warmed up, in truth. Whether everything I recounted was real or a dream, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The truth is like the mist. It envelops us even when we pretend not to notice. The horse remains there, the sitting one too. The diary, perhaps it's writing now, and the song, oh, the song, still waits for that fifth note. The fire still burns, even if eyes close. The echoes of the camp aren't loud. They're like whispers stuck in time. Close your eyes now. Breathe deep. Feel the light weight of everything that never happened. And if someday you return to that place, or discover that you never left it, just sit and listen. I will be there, telling it slowly, all over again.